Hello and welcome to At the Redline podcast. My name is Alec Gonzalez. I'm a life coach. I love to work with salespeople and business owners. I have with me Jeanette DeMays, and she owns a business that she will talk about a little later called Milk and Grace, which sounds really interesting to hear about. But I always like to sort of start at the beginning. Jeanette, where were you born? What was sort of your family of origin? What was the family dynamics? How did it work out for you?
So I was born in Whittier, which is South Los Angeles. My parents had met a few cities away at Biola University, and they were strong believers. And I am one of five children.
Oh, nice.
So I grew
Perfect
up,
number, by the way.
yeah. I grew up with three brothers. My little sister came way later. I prayed for her for a long time, but we grew up in a humble way. I just remember being on the end of a cul-de-sac, and even though my house was never the nicest house on the block, it's where all the kids wanted to go because my parents let us play and have fun, and so we
Nice.
had a pretty welcoming home.
Nice. That's cool. We have five kids too. Linda has five in her family. And so I always say five's the perfect number of children. Seven, obviously, a number of perfection and whatnot.
Yes.
Um, okay, and then what's your sort of arc of faith? What's the story of you coming into a relationship with Jesus?
I don't remember personally the first, I guess, story of my conversion, but I've been told that I was 4 years old in a bathtub, and somehow the conversation came up, and I had let my mom know that I wanted to accept Jesus into my life. But it's really been more of a process of refinement. And I would say in my early walk with God, I was really focused on just the outward life looking right to God. I didn't really understand grace yet, which is the name of my business. I was really works focused, even though I was taught, it's grace, it's not faith. I was trying to perform, do well, please God, obey the rules. And over time, I was really humbled, just realizing my imperfection and how much I really need God.
Yeah.
So I would say that's the big arc of my faith. In my college years, I was pretty rebellious against God, and I suffered the consequences of
Hmm.
that disobedience. And it was when I hit that low point of the consequences of sin that I truly surrendered my life and realized that I really need Jesus and I can't perform for him. I have
Yeah.
to accept him into my life, and I have to actually follow what he's asking me to do.
Huh. It's interesting when you talk about kind of works versus um grace. I think you were taught that. I think the evangelical church and truthfully all the Christian churches, they land so much on effort and doing good and doing right. And, loving your neighbor means doing what's best for them. That I think that it's only natural that people think that it's what I do creates union and closeness with God. So, yeah. So you said that you sort of came to faith, but you didn't tell the story of what exactly happened. Is there a story like that, or was it again just sort of a process?
I think that throughout my life, I try to take control. And I hit just points of realizing that I can't control things. And my efforts to control things cause me the misery of anxiety and, stress. And so it's for me, my faith has been walked out over time. It hasn't, like, yes, at 4 is when I really accepted Jesus. I can think of some other times in middle school where I felt that on fire for God feeling. But as I've refined into adulthood, I think it's just a daily decision,
Yeah.
and it's a constant thing where I have to come back and go. I need to let Jesus take control of my life. I need to live the way He wants me to, even if I'm scared, even if I don't like it. It's just a process that I'm constantly living out. I would say that I had a brief first marriage that was very abusive, and I ended up with a criminal restraining order. And it sounds like this big story, but that's really the ultimate point that I look back to, and I say from that point forward, from 2013 forward, I turned my life to Christ, and I
Nice.
have not. Of course, I take the reins back here and there, but I have really surrendered to Jesus since then.
That's good. I always like to talk about difficulty and struggle, hardship, even tragedy, and talk about how that has created something really hopeful and beautiful in our lives. Had so many people come in and just talk about how hardship has created the grit and determination that makes them who they are. I wonder if there's a story like that in your in your journey.
I think that, I have several stories like that, but the one that relates especially to Milk and Grace, I can actually remember specifically a time I'm married to a wonderful man. We've been married for 11 years. And I remember things had gone easy for us. We got married at 30 and 40, and everyone kind of warned us this is going to be really hard. And we were about a year married, and I was in church and I was thinking, I'm not as on fire for Jesus as I was when I was going through the hard stuff. And I thought, I don't have a great testimony yet. And, you don't say that to God because he'll give you one. And it took us a while to get pregnant. And when I was 20 weeks pregnant with my daughter, Ellie Grace, my scan was healthy and normal. I thought everything was going just fine. And 5 weeks later, I ended up in a hospital and they told me, you're about to give birth. I really still don't know what went wrong, but she was born at 25 weeks. She was 1 pound, 10 ounces. She was born with sepsis. And we were told that she would probably not live. And that just was a tremendously hard time. I think I don't run on the depressive side, I run more on the anxious side. But I just remember having tissue boxes in every corner of my home and crying in a way I had never experienced. And even navigating with my husband the different ways that we were managing the grief of that. So it was a several month long stay. And she had another incident where we faced, death's door again with her. So that period of my life was extremely painful, and having her in the hospital, having to go home every night and leave her when I wanted her with me, having to give over control of her nurturing and caretaking to other people, not knowing. I remember being up at 2 a.m. and just calling the hospital like, is Ellie still alive? It was just a
Gosh.
low point in my life.
Wow.
And that period of time just really transformed me so much.
Wow.
Just realizing that I wasn't going to be able to fix the situation, that it was going to ultimately
Oh
be
my
God's decision
gosh.
with her life.
That is so hard.
Yeah.
Well, what was the I mean, if you could say this hardship brought about some good, how would you define that? That just sounds ridiculous. Of course, all tragedy sounds terrible, but man, that sounds just absolutely horrible. What would you say is a level of grace that was afforded, or I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth. Like, if there's some good that came out of that, I'd like to hear what it is, but I don't want to try and
Yeah.
say that there's good that came, that that's for you to say.
I mean, in this scenario, what comes to mind is when I was a first time mom, I was just really listening to all the other people telling me this, provider, Ellie was in a lot of early intervention. So this physical therapist wants to approach it this way. This occupational therapist says to do this. This speech therapist has this idea. This nurse today wants you to do this. And I really lost agency over my own choices, over my parenting. And I was just outsourcing all of my wisdom to everybody else. And
Wow.
by the time Ellie was 3, she was the most miserable child I had ever seen. She was dysregulated. She was just unhappy. And I just remember having this point of looking and saying, like, I need to take back some ownership here. I need to make some of my own choices. I need to lean not on the medical advice and the professionals, but I need to lean on the Holy Spirit. I need to ask God what he would have me do with Ellie. And that includes myself, but that was just such a change for me of looking back at my life that I'm people pleasing. I'm wanting to, thinking there's some magic answer that the world has to offer. And when I really attuned myself to the Holy Spirit as a parent, when I really attuned myself to his guidance and trusted that, I just saw such a radical change
Wow.
in my life, in Ellie's life. That was a huge turning point. So that's
Wow.
something that came out
Thank
of
you
the
for
hard.
sharing that. My wife has a similar thing that she talks about, and it creates a great deal of grief. It didn't play out the way, but when she talks about the loss of agency, a sense that she has no control when you're in a hospital and you're, just coming out of a coma, and, you can't talk or move. They just tell you to do everything. At some point, she was intellectually there and realizing that everybody was telling her what to do. And it's just so hard. I'm really glad you shared that. I can't wait to show this video to my wife.
Mhm.
That's brilliant. Um, wow, that's really cool. The next part of the conversation usually dwells around. Obviously, I'm a coach and love to coach business owners and salespeople and pastors. And not everybody has had a professional coach, that coaches them, but many of us have had, mentors, people that loved us, that were maybe a little further along, that's noticed us and paid attention to us and helped us, into a little better future. And I wonder if you have a story like that.
I do. I grew up with a home fellowship inside of my home. And from my memory of this, because it's in my younger years, we used to be put to bed, but I would hear the worship happening of the adults in my living room. And one of the couples has stayed in my life since I was, I don't know, 5 years old. We refer to him as Uncle Mac and Aunt Louise, but they really took on my family as like grandparent figures. He had a real affinity for trains. And I remember he gave my family like a model train that we got to have in our garage. And he just kind of stuck through my life. But we had gone kind of our separate ways. And when I was 18, there was a wedding that brought us back together. And I let him know my ambitions of going to UC Berkeley. And he was a Cal graduate. And he got so excited. He mapped out a way for me and my mom to tour the university. And then subsequently, when I was accepted and attending there, he came to visit me several times from Oregon to California. He made it a point to come and see me. And I'll never forget a day that he took me across. I think we went on a ferry to Sausalito, which is on kind of near the San Francisco Bay Area. And we were sitting on a step, and I confessed to him that I wasn't walking with Jesus. I think he expected me to be a strong believer and obedient. And I had completely walked away from my values and my morals, and I was living a very worldly life. And I was really terrified of how he would respond. And he just had such a love for me unconditionally. And at that time, that's what I really needed to experience, that
Wow.
I was going to be loved regardless of my choices. And I just didn't expect that. I think he's in his 80s now. And at the time, he's probably a young adult, but I thought of him as someone who was absolutely going to condemn me and shame me. And that was a profound experience that just drew me and connected to him.
Wow.
We still continue to stay in touch. He still has visited my children, and he's just such a special, godly man. And he's just loved me so well throughout my life, as a grandfather would love a granddaughter.
That's cool. What a great story. That's awesome. Okay, so to sort of leaning into your business and profession, what do you do? Who's a perfect client? What's the pain point that you resolve or help with? Talk about your business. Hey, I wanted to stop this video and just say a lot of salespeople I know, they know there's another level. They know the product, they like the people, they really believe in what they sell. But when the pressure hits, a lot of salespeople, they lose their conviction, they lose their nerve, they hesitate on cold outreach, they lay down or even back off with a simple objection. They fail to confidently lead people towards a decision. I coach salespeople. Send me a quick text, 509-999-3305. I'm in your corner. Let's get together.
Yeah. So I think that my twins, they were born a year after my daughter. I have identical twin boys. They were 6 months old, and my husband noticed I was spending a lot of time mentoring moms and talking to them about breastfeeding, particularly in a multiples setting. How do you breastfeed twins? I was only 6 months ahead, but I had overcome a lot. And he's like, is there a business in this?
Mm.
And he set something off in my brain. And I think for over the next couple of years, I already had a degree, but I went back to school. I was doing it in the middle of the night. And I would think I was 35 when this happened. And I had this just huge passion, desire, just energy that went towards that. So since 2020, I've been focused on this field. I'm an international board certified lactation consultant. So that's referred to as an IBCLC. And I work with patients on their feeding journey, ideally prenatally. I would say that's the big area of my business that I wish we saw more success. I wish more people came to me when they're pregnant as they're wrestling with how they might want to feed their baby or babies. But my business is called Milk and Grace, and I also contract under another local business, Love at First Latch. But I do what we call out of office, so private practice. So I see people usually outside of the hospital, either in their home or in an office setting. My appointments are, much longer than the help you get in the hospital, more like an hour, sometimes up to 2 hours if it's really complex.
Are you, it sounds like you have an incredible story. You have lots of education and a high degree of uh, accreditation. I'm wondering if you're stuck in Spokane, or can you, worldwide or nationwide or Western Washington, can you Zoom? Can you call? Does it have to be in-person meetings, or are you, confined to an area where people can arrive and be with you in person?
There is an option, and I do virtual appointments pretty regularly. I think the big pain point is that most families prefer this to be something that's covered by insurance. And so a lot of the barriers I face to supporting families is, does their insurance cover a virtual appointment? And that can be kind of the deciding factor of them making that investment. But I am able to do virtual appointments. I would say in certain situations, a virtual appointment is absolutely beneficial. And in other cases, it is ideal to be in person because there are certain things that I can identify in an in-person consult that I have a harder time doing over
Okay.
Zoom. Just simple things like we have a
No, 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 enough said. You don't have to
okay,
say
yeah.
anymore. No need to get uncomfortable here. Okay. I'm curious about pain points and problems that you resolve. Obviously, there's women out there that are having problems and don't know that you're the answer. What are women experiencing, or problems that are being felt or experienced that you resolve?
I would say that a lot of women think that they are going to get support and accurate information in a hospital. Like when they give birth in a hospital, they think there are going to be providers there that know about breastfeeding that can support them in that, and are surprised to find out that hospitals are businesses, that they are strained in staffing, that their lactation consultant, if they give birth on a Sunday, might not even be there, that their pediatricians may have very minimal training in breastfeeding. So I think a big pain point is families getting inaccurate information and kind of relying on these outside people that they think are going to know what to tell them, but are, really just seeing them for a few minutes and not able to help them kind of come upon their own answers. Other than that, I would say that lactation consultants have kind of a reputation for being so obsessed with breastfeeding that we're not going to support formula use. We're going to shame a family if they want to combo feed. And to the contrary, I've had families that I work with that I gently encourage that weaning is the right option for them at a certain crossroads. So, I think having them realize that lactation consultants, we really are infant feeding specialists. We can help with formula selection. We can help with combo feeding plans. We can help with pumping. And we're not dogmatically obsessed with exclusive breastfeeding.
Okay. How long do you journey with a new mom?
I would say that varies. I think the magic typically happens in the second or third appointment. So a lot of times the first appointment, there's a lot of history taking, and you're seeing a baby one time in one environment. Maybe it's one of their best feeds they've ever had or one of the worst feeds they've ever had. But once I hit that second or third appointment, I'm seeing more of the patterns. I'm seeing more of the whole picture. It varies. I would say the families I work with, how complex their situation is. If I see them one time and they just kind of need the pat on the back, hey, everything's going great. I've measured what they transferred. I've, checked in with you. Everything's looking good. That's all they need to hear.
Mhm.
And they might check in with me in the future at some other milestones, like introducing solids or if their baby bites or something like that. But otherwise, I would say, we're anywhere between 1 to 6 visits is typical. And I would say 3 is where a lot of times
Okay.
it lands.
How are you going to market?
I do. So I have not marketed myself well. I only in the last 6 months have I really made the leap to say, this is what I'm going to do 100%. I kind of had my hand in another cookie jar. I've worked in Christian education that came naturally to me, and it was a guaranteed financial option for me. But I kept on recognizing that it was sort of overtaking all of my time and putting Milk and Grace on the back burner. So only recently have I launched my website. It's kind of in its earlier stages. I've started promoting on social media. I do get a lot of my clients working under Love at First Latch, which is a local practice in the Liberty Lake area. So
Mm-hmm.
most of my clients right now come through Love at First Latch.
Have you thought about a podcast?
I have thought about it, but not in depth.
Because this is really good content.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know that if I cared about your subject,
Mm-hmm.
more, that I'd have better questions, and that there's, dozens of directions you could go.
Yes.
Yeah, I think a podcast would be great. You've got a good voice, and you know, it's important. I think what you're doing is important, and having multiple conversations along the way would be super helpful.
Yeah.
And it would be a
Yeah.
good funnel, I think, for, people all around the country.
Yeah. Some of my colleagues create like coursework.
Yeah.
And so something like that has definitely crossed my mind. I think my biggest goal, like something that I just find so important and makes this work so meaningful to me, is that sometimes feeding journeys, just like everything in life, don't turn out the way we hoped. We might go into giving birth and have a baby and think, this is how I want to do things. And then, there's just many variables that can
Yeah.
change that. But I think when you have someone walk alongside you, when you get accurate information, when you get
Yeah.
support, even if the end result isn't what you hoped for, when you look
Right.
back, you don't have those questions of what if someone had
Right.
helped me? What
Yeah.
if someone had known those,
Right.
answers?
Someone smart who knows their stuff is
Yes.
giving me advice, and I'm consenting, and my doubts and fears are being like, it's okay. Like,
Yeah.
that's so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, how would someone get a hold of you? Let's say there's someone in Wenatchee or Spokane, and they see this and they're like, dude, I have my best friend's having a baby. I'd love to meet her. Is a phone call the best way, or what's your best contact?
My website is milkandgrace.com, and there is a booking form there that can be completed. I also am on Instagram and Facebook under Milk and Grace Lactation. So those are two easy ways to get a hold of me. I have an email address, Jeanette at milkandgrace.com.
Okay.
So
We'll
those
put
would
it
be the
right
main
down here.
ways.
If I had only one thing, I'll put your name and one other thing. What would be the best thing? Like a phone number or an email address or a website?
I would say my website.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'll do then. All right. Thanks for coming on my podcast. I can't wait to edit this. It should be a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much.
Again,
for
my
having
name's
me.
Alec Gonzalez. I love to coach salespeople, business owners, and pastors. If you know anyone in those fields, give them a call. I'd love to host someone on a podcast if you're thinking this would be fun. Give me a call. My number is 509-999-3305. And always, if you like the video, click the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, I'd love it if you would. Thanks. Have a great day. We'll see you next time.